I am getting prepared for a freezing of the global economy, in which case there will be a period of time where credit cards don't work. They're going to be scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. In the last video, we saw that a collapse in real estate might be the event that brings about the next great global financial crisis. In this video, we'll explore whether or not the severity of the crash will be enough to bring down the world monetary system. So buckle up. It's time to prepare and get ready the best we can. Like I keep on saying, you can only play the hand that you're dealt. And so all I'm doing is trying to inform everybody and protect as many people as possible. So in this first article here, U.S. small businesses face mass closures without more pandemic aid. And what this article is talking about is that for most businesses, the Paycheck Protection Plan has already been exhausted. So the bailout, the loans that they got from the government for the under the CARES Act, the aid, that's already run out. And now these businesses are facing, do they have to close or not? And it also talks about how all of the consumers have cut back on their spending. So a lot of businesses are down by 1/3 or more and having to do further layoffs. Then we move on to this Bloomberg opinion article. Think real yields can't go lower? Think again. Forget about tapering. The economy may need another $12 trillion of asset purchases just to keep it ticking over. So just to keep it ticking over says we've got an economy on life support. This is in critical condition in the hospital on life support, and it may need another $12 trillion of asset purchases. And every time I read this about asset purchases, the Federal Reserve gave counterfeiting a fancy name. The way they do it, they counterfeit trillions of dollars into existence, and they buy something with it to get it into circulation. That's the asset purchases. And so even this author thinks that it's okay for the Federal Reserve to counterfeit $12 trillion into existence and fraudulently purchase $12 trillion worth of stuff that's from the private sector. You know, they're purchasing bonds and mortgage-backed securities and stuff that private investors or brokerage houses are holding, and that gets it into the economy. But the morality of this is a crime. These people should be going to jail for this. But anyway, going further down into the article, we see that there is a tool on the Cleveland Fed's website where you can plug in a bunch of different factors and get different projections for inflation, unemployment, and see what various monetary policy rules would spit out for future interest rates. And with unemployment high and inflation low, it says that the results are grim. Even the public projections of the Fed's own governors, so the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, imply that an effective Fed's fund rate of minus 5% is what's needed to keep the economy going. Minus 5%. Now, the Fed funds rate, this is the interbank lending rate, basically, when you're talking about Federal Reserve funds rate. And so this is the rate, at the end of the day, all of the banks have to lend and borrow to each other to stay in business. That's just the way banking is. And what we're talking about here is one bank saying to another, loan me $1 billion and I'll only charge you 5% for loaning it to me. I'll only charge you 5% for taking the risk that I might not be able to pay you the $1 billion back. You know, that I might have a problem on my balance sheet and we might go into default. In practice, there is no way nominal interest rates will be set that low as being set that low by the Federal Reserve. And the likelihood is instead that we will receive ever larger doses of quantitative easing. That's currency printing, that's asset purchases, that's counterfeiting. Quantitative easing is another fancy term for expanding the currency supply by counterfeiting currency into existence and buying stuff. Further, math from the economists reveals that each $100 billion in QE is equivalent to a rate cut of about 3 basis points. Now, a basis point is 1/100th of a percent. So 3 basis points on a 100, if you take $1 trillion, that would be 30 basis points, or about 1/3 of a percent. So that yields a ballpark estimate that another 12 trillion, well, actually, to reach 5% would take about 15 trillion in asset purchases will be needed just to keep the economy ticking over until somehow the brake imposed by the pandemic can be lifted. So this will get us through the crisis, another 12 or 15 trillion dollars of currency creation and theft by the world's central banks, by the Federal Reserve. This is 12 trillion by the Fed is what they're talking about, to keep the U.S. economy ticking over, to keep it on that life support without dying. Massive inflation may be coming because the U.S. government has cornered itself into a fiscal endgame. Years of deficit spending has made monetary policy a slave to fiscal policy. Now, monetary policy is what the Federal Reserve sets. Those are the decisions the Federal Reserve makes on how much currency to create, what interest rates will be. Fiscal policy is what the government does. The government decides that they're going to spend an extra $1 trillion, like they're deciding either right now or they've already decided. I haven't followed it lately, but there was another $1 trillion spending package coming. And when that happens, the Fed's balance sheet over the next couple months will go from the 7 trillion to 8 trillion in the next couple of months. But then we've got that extra 12 trillion on top of it, making a total of 20 trillion. And what's interesting is Deutsche Bank last week projected that over the next couple of years, the Fed's balance sheet will go to 20 trillion. So monetary policy is now a slave to fiscal policy. So whatever the government decides, the Federal Reserve has to supply. That's what that is saying. And if we go further down into this article at the very end of it, it says, since the invention of money, this has happened to all of the world's super economies and many of the minor ones. Rome, Spain, Germany, the United States, and next, the U.S. In every case, the outcome was the same. The country's currency became less attractive as a reserve currency, and the country's economic prominence faded. In every case, the fault traces to a single source, the inability of politicians to constrain government. And that's really where all of this comes from, is politicians promising more than they can deliver. And they never save for a rainy day. They dug us, all the politicians dug us into a pit so deep that when the pandemic came, a crisis like that, they don't save for a rainy day, so they can't survive a rainy day. We're in this pit. The rain causes the earth to become unstable and turn to mud, and everything collapses in on top of us. The great Ludwig von Mises said, there is no means of avoiding the financial collapse of a boom brought about by credit expansion. The alternative is only whether the crisis should come sooner as a result of a voluntary abandonment of further credit expansion, or later as a final and total catastrophe of the currency system involved. And this is where we're headed, the total catastrophe of the currency system involved. I am getting prepared for a freezing of the global economy, in which case there will be a period of time where credit cards don't work. They're going to be scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. Massive currency creation is the only thing they can do, and the massive currency creation eventually ends in hyperinflation. And I've got a couple of analogies that I came up with here and sayings. One is that the value of the dollar will be moving away from us so fast that it'll actually become redshifted. Now, not everybody is going to get that, but when a galaxy is traveling away from us very, very fast, it becomes redshifted. And the other is The only thing faster than a speed of light is the loss of purchasing power of a fiat currency at the end of a hyperinflation. I want to thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.